What's the worst thing that happened to you on a Friday the 13th? My boyfriend told me that it creeps him out when I change emotions quickly. I have bipolar 1, but I'm on 2 different meds. Although he says it doesn't happen very often, I still can't help but think if my own bath finds me creepy, I must horrify other people. I know it's hard to be around someone who changes emotion quick, but it still really hurt. I would encourage you to have a conversation with him about this. I also have been on your end of that discussion, but transparency prevents more hurt feelings in the future. Good luck with everything. Thank you, and yes, I will need it. My boyfriend and I woke up in separate parts of the house in hysterics, naked and covered in sweat. When we both finally calmed down and talked, we realized we had the same dream of being surrounded by a group of black and white people with no mouths. At last, of Friday 13th, I was driving home from a family reunion pretty late at night, and the drive was about 2 hours. I didn't stay the night because I had to be back for work the following day. Most of the drive was on roads with dense bushes and trees on either side, the real creepy ones you see a lot in movies. Anyway, I had been driving about 45 minutes, and I was starting to get really tired. You know how sometimes you just suddenly become really tired, out of nowhere? Well, yeah, that happened to me. I knew I wasn't going to last, but I didn't come across any place that I felt I could park and safely sleep. Anyway, after it became clear to me that I wasn't going to find a place to pull up and my tiredness wasn't going away, I did something very questionable. I pulled over to the side of the road onto the grass, behind some bushes, to try and hide my car from anybody else who was going to come past. The roads weren't empty. I came across another car every few minutes or so. I made a mental note that the time was 11:22 and then fell asleep. Sometime later, I was awoken by a scratching sound. I looked at the clock, 11:50. The sound stopped after a few seconds, and because I was still extremely tired, I didn't bother looking around and simply went back to sleep. I was later awoken by the same sound, and it was now 12:40. This time it really freaked me out because the sound didn't stop. The thought ran across my mind that it was just an animal inspecting the car. But why would it return almost an hour after it had left the previous time? I looked in my rearview mirror and just managed to catch a glimpse of something running away into the forest. Now, at the time, I thought it was the damn hook killer. You know, the one that scratched that couple's car and then slaughtered the guy when he got out to investigate? Fuck that, I thought to myself. So I got the hell out of there. There was a bend no more than 100 yards up the road, and as I came around it, there was a fucking car, parked off to the side of the road with the driver's side door opened. I slowed down just to look to see if anyone was in there. There wasn't. Then I looked in my rearview mirror. I didn't see anything, and all of a sudden, this guy comes sprinting around the corner. He starts screaming at me, shouting stuff like, "Hey, you, get the fuck out of your car, now!" I noped the fuck out of there and sped off. I never saw the guy again. Moral of the story: don't fucking sleep on the side of a deserted road. A few years ago, I was walking through the woods off the beaten track a bit, and I smelt this really overpowering sweet smell. Being nosy, I pulled back the undergrowth to have a look and found a dead body. The guy had clearly been there a while and wasn't looking great, all swollen and green and black with various runny bits. The local wildlife had also been dining well for a few days. I called the police, who told me to wait with the body until they arrived. Being in the middle of nowhere, it took a while for them to arrive, and it got dark, and I was just sat there in the dark with him for a long time. It turned out he had committed suicide. For a long time afterwards, I had dreams about him, and he would talk to me and not nice things. Mainly about how he was angry I had disturbed his resting place, and he wanted me to kill myself. Probably just my imagination, but all pretty disturbing at the time. He still turns up in my dreams from time to time, and no doubt will be tonight after typing this. Holy shit. Smelled sweet. Difficult to describe. Sort of like rotting lamb. People say that a rotting body has a very distinctive smell, and I can see what they mean. I had awesome parents who let me sleep in the living room on weekend nights when I was very young because my sister was a light sleeper and I could stay up until dawn. But of course, I always end up sleeping on the couch because Nick at night made me tried. So, one night I wake up to the prickly feeling, like an instinct. Just bolted into a sitting position and stared out the front window. We lived in rural Georgia, so you can imagine the magnitude of trees. In perfect light cast from the moon, I see a silhouette of someone in this fucking tree. The family dog dashes to the window and is snarling into the glass. Terrified, I run into my parents' room and try to explain to my parents that there is a strange person outside. Dad grabs something defensive and darts outside with the dogs to beat the wax off the hot head. I tremble in Mama's arms until Dad comes home and says he saw no one and to go to bed. I decide to sleep in my regular bedroom. I fill in my sister in as to what happened. Dad is making regular rounds in the house with a cup of coffee. We're all still and I finally think I can sleep. Nope. I notice the man outside my window. From what I can see in the moonlight, he gives me a shush signal and runs away. Just turns around to run a straight line away. I swear I couldn't stop crying for what felt like hours. You just reminded me of a strange thing that happened when I was little. My brother and I were both under 7 years old. He maybe 4 and I 6. We were playing outside in the snow when a strange white car pulled into our long driveway. This was uncommon since our driveway was hidden. The window rolls down and a man with short hair and goatee pulls up a camera and takes our picture. Then he rolls up the window and drives away. Never had any closure or follow-up on that situation, but it freaked my mom out so bad. This same thing kinda happened with me. I was asleep in the living room and was suddenly awake, like wide awake. I hear my cat growling and looking over across the room, and I look over too and see a big silhouette, faintly human-shaped. I couldn't see any eyes or anything, but I knew it was looking at me. I slowly sat up and leaned in closer to look at it, and it didn't move. I probably sat there for 10 minutes, locked in contact with it before a sudden feeling of peace washed over me, and I laid down and comfortably went to sleep. I woke up the next morning and saw nothing there that could make that shape. It is safe to say I don't sleep in the living room anymore. I was 17 and had just gotten my license. Back in high school, my friends and I had made it a mission to find abandoned houses to throw parties in. We had a few good candidates, but the motherlode was this house I would pass on my home from work. It was an undeveloped shell of a huge home with a large property in the back. I had told one of my friends about it, and one day before we went to see a movie, I took him to the house. It was about dusk in summer, so I had my headlights on. I pulled into the front of the house, and we were there for like 10 seconds tops before we pulled back to go to the main road. A minute later, this big truck pulls up behind us with its high beams on and riding our ass. My friend and I took note of it, but paid it no mind as we headed back to the main road. At the light, I turned right, but the truck cut through the gas station at the corner and blocked us off. Out of the truck comes this big hulk of a man, and my friend and I are shitting our pants. He raps on the window and I roll it down. Now, the really freaky part is that this a busy road, and now there was no one in sight. He asks us what we were doing at the house, and I quickly lied and said we were making a U-turn. He stares at us for a few seconds, smiles, and sends us on our way. To this day, the house remains unfinished, and I'm convinced it's a drug operation of some sort. Nothing to do with luck, but a strange start this day had for me. This morning I was woken by a huge car crash. I hear a car trying to brake, and then the crash, no explosion, and a girl screaming for help. As I go to the window, my wife jumps out of the bed asking me if I see the car. We can't see anything from our windows. We chat for a while and we go back to bed, 1 hour before the alarm. Nothing, no accident. It was not a loud TV from the neighbors. Nothing, maybe a shared dream. I don't know, I even called a friend in the police. No accidents this morning, nothing. Why didn't you check on the screaming girl? You just went back to sleep because the clock said you could. The sound was coming from afar loud, but just a short scream. So where would I look? I live near the center of my town, big blocks, where we have a big hospital, a police station, and few 24-hour diners and stores. So someone would be much closer and of bigger help. Also, logic would not let you search for something by sound in a big town in 4 a.m. So enjoy the story and try not to question everything this Friday. Fine. But promise me that next time you'll have a look outside, just to be sure. Not creepy, but definitely paranormal. I was about 17 and was in my bedroom crying my eyes out over something. Home could be difficult at times, and that evening I was really upset. I really needed someone to talk to, but the only phone in the house was downstairs where my parents were, so calling a friend wasn't an option. I didn't know what to do to deal with the crap I was trying to live with and really felt that it couldn't go on for much longer. I remember thinking, please, someone just help me. Not a prayer as such. I'm not really sure if that does any good. More sort of a mental scream into the void. There was definitely no one in the room with me. It was a tiny room, and I had my back to a chest of drawers. And then I felt a something on my left shoulder, as if someone was standing behind me and resting their hand on me. I could feel the weight of each individual finger and the palm cupping my shoulder, and I could feel warmth from it. It didn't scare me, but it was enough to stop me crying. I guess the feeling lasted for a minute or so and then just stopped. I have no idea what it was, but it was enough to calm me down. I wish I could feel it again. My aunt had the same thing happen to her in college. She was sitting alone in her dorm on her bed, crying into her hands when she felt the weight and sensation of a hand on her shoulder. She always felt that it was her, deceased, grandmother assuring her everything would be okay. She says it calmed her down, like it did you. We lived in a house a few years back, and random things would just go missing, then they'd turn up somewhere else. We never really thought hard on it because they were never expensive or important things. So because of this, none of us ever mentioned it to each other. Fast forward and Mum loses an earring. Not a huge deal, but it's a nice dangly pair she wears frequently. Maybe a month later, I come home and find it perfectly laid out in the middle of the ground at the end of a high-traffic hallway. It has 3 doors at the end. Take a photo and show Mum when she gets back. Give her back her earring, and we discuss the oddity. I mentioned that lately I've been misplacing random, inconsequential stuff like staplers, and she looks at me and she goes, "That's weird." Me too. Our housemate gets home and we mention it, and he goes, "Oh man, so weird. My razor vanished for a while and I found it back on my sink one day." So basically, we're all convinced there was a friendly ghost attached to that house that just misplaced things to let us know they were present. I don't smoke and I don't have many friends who do, but I keep several ashtrays at home, just in case. So, one day, about a year ago, I was looking for some papers and I found one of those ashtrays in one of the cupboards. It was completely empty and quite clean, by the way. I was pretty busy that day, so instead of putting the ashtray back in the cupboard, I just laid it on the kitchen table and went to do some repair work in the garage. I returned inside the house about an hour later, and the ashtray, still lying on the kitchen table, was filled with cigarette ash. No cigarette butts, just ash. I felt a faint scent of cigarette smoke in the house. Definitely not as strong as I would have expected, judging by the amount of ash. Like I said, the ashtray was definitely empty and clean when I found it and put it on the table. I took a kitchen knife and carefully searched the entire house. Nobody was there. I checked all the doors and windows. They were locked. Then I searched the house again, checking was any cash or valuables missing, but it was all there. I called all my friends, even non-smokers, and asked them did they happen to drop by my house that day. They all said no. I also inspected locks for damage, but there didn't appear to be any. I changed locks, just in case, and had trouble sleeping for days afterwards. I actually stored the ash into the bag, and I still keep it in the drawer, just in case. Though I doubt it will actually resolve or prove anything. The day after that bizarre incident, a murder took place in my neighborhood. A mentally disturbed girl with a history of drug abuse stabbed a convenience store cashier to death following an argument over a pack of cigarettes. It is very likely unrelated, but sometimes I wonder. I don't keep spare keys in the yard, in front of the door, or anything like that, in case someone is wondering. Not sure if this counts as paranormal exactly, but it creeped me and my roommate out. So my roommate and I lived in a 2-bedroom apartment with a shared living space. I had just laid down in bed to go to sleep for the night, and my roommate was still up in the living room doing schoolwork. It was almost midnight. As I'm laying there on my phone, I get a call from a number I don't recognize. I answer it, expecting a telemarketer. Hello. A kind of high-pitched man's voice answers, "Hey, is this my name?" I should have hung up at this point. Yes, who is this? It's me, Derek. Remember from high school? I was wondering if you wanted to talk. It's been forever. I went to an extremely small rural high school, greater than 100. And there was no one in my graduating class, or any class, named Derek. I said, I don't know who you are, and as I'm hanging up, I hear him say, "Wait, my name, wait." But I hung up anyway. The fact that this person knew my name is really weird because, not to brag, but my name is really unique, and I'm definitely the only person in my home county with that name. I went out into the living room to tell my roommate about it. As I'm telling her, she pulls up her phone and asks, "Was it this number?" She got a call from that same number at the same minute I did. She didn't answer the call and they left a voicemail. We listened to it and it kind of sounded like someone breathing maybe, or just moving. And then distantly, at the end, it sounded like a group of people yelling, screaming, but it was distant. My roommate and I did go to the same high school, but we've changed numbers since we graduated, and there shouldn't have been anyone but close friends, 1 to 6, people who would have both of our numbers. The area code was in our home state, but it was really far away from our hometown, and we didn't know anyone there. Maybe I'm paranoid, but it really wigged us out.